All right, good morning and welcome everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces and welcome to bargaining. We appreciate everyone being here. And just really, I'd like to start with a sincere message of gratitude. I know everyone in this room has very full plates and a lot going on, both professionally and outside of work as well. And so want to take a moment to recognize and share just the appreciation, the heartfelt appreciation for everybody at this table as we kick off our classified bargaining. Today we're going to focus on setting the foundation for a successful bargain. Our goal as we go through this is to engage in open and respectful discussions as we work together to find agreements that really help support our classified staff and also the long-term success of our district, finding sustainable solutions, and also, most importantly, the success of our students as we move forward. And so as we embark in our discussions and our negotiations together, keeping those things at the forefront of our thoughts, I think is always a good lens for us to ground ourselves in. What is the impact to the district, to students, and to staff that the conversations and discussions that we're engaging in will have? So recognize that everybody at this table has an important role in that process. We really look forward to engaging in collective or collaborative discussions together with the intention of working together in good faith to find agreements and solutions for our discussions that supports all of our staff, students, and the district moving forward. So with that, again, today we will be spending time kind of laying the foundations of how we will engage in discussions together. We'll spend some time getting to know one another a little bit better so that we can have that solid relationship foundation as we begin to engage in some of the more difficult conversations starting on the 10th. So with that, I'd like to invite Kirsty or Teresa if there's anything that you'd like to say as well. And then we'll do a round of introductions just so everybody knows who's at the table here and get to know one another a little bit better that way as well. But Kirsty or Teresa, is there anything that you would like to add?
Good morning. We're just excited to be at the table, excited to meet in this process and be able to talk back and forth. I think you covered a lot of it. And we might cover a little bit more with our ground rules. I don't know if Teresa has anything else.
All right. And thanks for using the mic. I appreciate that. The mics partially are to help us hear one another, but then also it's how we're doing the audio recording. So if we can just help remind each other to turn the mics on as we're going through this, that would be helpful to ensure that we have a good quality audio recording at the end. On our side as well, you may see Justice and Sunita.
Stephanie had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie. Go for it, Stephanie.
Not pushed in very.
Is it plugged in the other side?
Oh, is ours working? There's a little red switch there. Yeah, it's not working on our side.
We're off to a good start. Well, that's our first icebreaker activity. Who could figure out the power?
PJ, do you think it's something over here?
I know this is a theme for. Also, Justice may be joining us later today. Sunita isn't able to be with us today, but we may see Justice a little bit later this afternoon. I mentioned it to email. Okay. And just so everybody knows, so Justice and Sunita will be sharing the role of board rep on the team. So there may be times that we see them both here together, but it will likely be that we see one or the other kind of sharing their role. Is everything okay with the room back there, setup wise, or we're good? Okay.
Summary and jobs that are capable of, got it. And then we did make sure to leave the doors open during non-caucus time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. All right. Well, let's start with a round of introductions. I think it'd be fun to share just who we are, our names, our positions, and then kind of a prompt to connect on a little deeper level. And so what we came up with was just your name, your position, and a first job experience that was, or position rather, one of your first jobs that was somewhat memorable. And so I'll start off. I'm Curtis Samana. My role is here in human resources. And one of my first jobs was at Chuck E. Cheese. I started off at, I think I was 16. I remember I just got my license and then realized I need to have money for gas if I'm going to do anything with my license. So I got a job at Chuck E. Cheese, started off in their kitchen, which was pretty cool. And then I moved on to the costume role, so getting in the mouse and all the other characters, and there was just a lot of abuse in that role. Like I didn't realize how much kids love to like kick the mouse and run away and think it's hilarious and dare all their friends to do the same. So it was I think it set me up well for my future career as a middle school principal in many ways. So that was one of my earlier gigs. Susan, or would we
Let someone on their side.
BJ, you want, or who would like to go next?
One of my first jobs was I drove it. Oh, I'm Dina Green. I work at Beaver Acres in the ISC. I forget, not everybody knows that. One of my first jobs was I drove ice cream truck. I did not make much money because I ate the profit.
Popcorn. Somebody wants to share.
I'm Stephanie Marshall. I'm a para 2 over at Heighton Elementary. I work in the EGC and also as a AAA. I've had lots of jobs. I guess my first memorable one would be my first job. I was about 11 and I worked at an antique store slash bed and breakfast. I'd ride my bike after school and work there for an hour or two, once or twice a week. I think minimum wage is about $4.25. So, yeah.
We started around the same time, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah.
Taking a look at it, so. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll go next. So it's fun to think about those early jobs. I don't think, thank you. Susan Rodriguez. We're going to get to our communication style in a minute. Susan Rodriguez, I'm Chief HR Officer here. It's nice to see all of you. So thinking about early jobs, I don't think it counts when you're 8 years old and you babysit the neighbor kids. That doesn't happen anymore, but it did long time ago. So I'm going to go with when I was 15, I went to spend the summer in Washington with my aunt and uncle who owned a restaurant named Esther's Pies in Kennewick. And I was a server. And I did that my summer when I was 15 and also when I was 16.
Liz Scholes. I'm an early childhood care provider at William Walker. And I'm going to disagree, Susan. I think at 8, babysitting does count. That's exactly the same age I started babysitting the neighbor kids. We lived obviously right next door. But I was really into the Babysitters Club. And so I made flyers and I delivered them to all of the neighbors, and I was very into it. So I was very popular, and it does count.
All right, I'm Andrew Stenjum. I work in the IT department with all of the tech support people. I had a zillion jobs before I was 22, so I'm like struggling with the 75 different stories I want to tell right now. But out of college, my first jobs were as a special ed assistant in what had been my former high school. So that was kind of an odd thing to go back to my high school and be a staff person. And then when I moved out to Oregon, my first job was in a house with people with autism. And so I was 21 and I was helping adults who are 45 years old and changing diapers and things like that. And so that was my first experience in Oregon.
I'm Gabby Kelly. I'm the OA2 at Raleigh Park. And my first, I guess, real job, I worked in Maiden, Oregon, down in the Galleria that no longer exists. And it was a fun gig, getting to help people kind of explore the city and things that are made in our wonderful state.
I'm Charity Rawls. I'm the administrator for nutrition services. And kind of my second job-ish, I was graduated from high school and started working up at the Oregon Zoo in the cafes there. So I worked there during the summers when I was going to college. And I got put on fryers a lot my first year because apparently I was really fast and good at doing that. And no one else wants to do fryers.
I guess I'll go next. Dominique Demoshe, campus supervisor at Aloha High School. First job, I guess non-W-2 was being a paper delivery boy, riding my bike around the neighborhood, carrying that big front sack. First paying job, I'd say I was 15, and I was a dishwasher / line cook at a sports pub.
Paul Hansen. I'm the assistant principal at Stoller Middle School. I too, first job delivering the Linwood Enterprise, and going out on riding a bike and figuring out fences and all the stuff with that, and then kind of working as a lifeguard and swim instructor at the community pool.
I'm good. BJ Donovan out of the maintenance department. My first job, I have a couple I wanted to talk about, but the best one was in high school. I worked at McKinsey Ford for almost 2 years as a lot attendant, and it was pretty awesome. We got to meet a lot of different, you just see everything from people coming in happy to people mad because they got offended by the offer for their car. We got to do the car shows. We got to drive, all the Mustangs, the Lightnings, big trucks. And anyway, I thought that set me up well into the future for customer service and stuff like that. So
I'm Carrie Delph. I'm Chief of Staff, and kind of like Andrew, I had a lot of different early jobs. Worked as a newspaper carrier, as a night janitor, and food service, childcare, all sorts of different jobs. But then I also spent a lot of years working event security. So I was thinking if I could count up the number of times I've been told I'm with the band, that wasn't true, it'd be a lot. That does not fly, no.
I'm Lisa Parlett. My work at Westview in nutrition services. And my first job was the day that I graduated high school. My principal said, "Welcome to staff." So I was on staff at my high school the day I graduated for the summer, which prepared me to be in the military because I was able to be aware of things that school districts want, and then what the military wants is way more.
Good morning. I'm Brian Hungerford, District Legal Counsel. Similar to Curtis, I had pizza making experience, although mine was Papa. It was Papa Aldo's back in the day, not Papa Murphy's. So I didn't have to cook anything, and no mouse costumes either. So lucky there. Oh God.
Tammy Fry. I am in the library staff at Sato Elementary, and I appreciate your grace as I came in a few minutes late this morning. We had our OBOB finals scheduled this morning before I had the times for this meeting, so thank you for your generosity. My father was a pharmacist and an entrepreneur, so I grew up working in the family business. And if anyone has had that experience, we are the hardest workers there are.
I'm Mike Schofield. I work in the business office. Probably the least remarkable or shocking job that I had was my father owned a CPA firm in Roseburg. And so my high school summers were spent auditing school districts with the family, going to places like Azalea, Elkton, Oregon, places like that. And I would take shoe boxes of nutrition services funds and student body funds and spend my summers auditing. So not a big shocker there.
So my name is Martin Slater. I represent transportation. I'm a school bus driver. I drive Route 305. My first kind of job really was summertime. My parents were renting a house with a man named Ross Hurst, and he had purchased a hamburger stand, and then he had it moved and was going to set it down onto the foundation, and I was his helper because he had 4 daughters. So one of the jobs I did, this is pre-OSHA, was melting the lead so you could put in and around the lead pipes when we got done.
So I'm Chris Parker. And what else am I supposed to say? My job or?
Job and.
Okay, early job. So currently I am a support person for HR, Curtis and Alfonso. And one of my first jobs was a food service employee at an amusement park where I grew up in Utah. So I would make breaded chicken. So big bins of raw chicken, throwing them in the breading. I would have breading all over myself. It was lovely, but I would always sing while I did it about how much I would like to not be breading chicken.
I'm Diana Hess. I am a program specialist in the maintenance department. And I have 2 things that I was thinking about, but when Chris said hers, it reminded me of, I guess, truly one of the first professional jobs I had was working in a bakery, and I had the 4 a.m. until noon shift and made donuts every morning at a little grocery store that all the miners stopped in on their way up the mountain, and having little burns all up my arms because it was not like Krispy Kreme. It was flip them all.
I'm Tracy Caprillo. I'm the field representative on OSEA staff.
And one of my first non-babysitting jobs, actually worked two places part-time at the same time. I worked the kids department of JCPenney, back to school time, and I worked at Cold Stone. So I smelled like ice cream and was covered in glitter from little girls' clothes all summer. Felt like a very tired fairy princess.
I'm Kirsty Sackman. I am a para 3 rover for the district. I would say my very first job was, my mom was a waitress and all of her friends were, and they would always host the football parties at our house because my mom was the only one with a child. And so I was the waitress for all of the parties. I learned very quickly how to be a bartender and also how to settle up for all the cursing during the game and all the quarters that ultimately got me to Disneyland in my piggy bank. But my first legit job was rest in peace, Sunset Lanes. I was a birthday party host through high school, so I worked on the weekends. It was often pretty funny. I was known as Spirit Girl at Southridge, and often on Saturdays there was still a lot of face paint on my face, and kids always thought it was really funny. My boss, however, did not love the red tint to my face, but we had lots of fun making pizzas and dancing around the bowling alley. But I'm still really bad at bowling.
All right. Did we get everyone? Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. To kick us off today as well, we have Andrew and Paul. We'd like to, are going to lead us through an activity, kind of an icebreaker activity, but the intention is to connect with each other, get to know each other a little bit better, and then also learn a little bit more about how we engage in these kind of processes and discussions so that we can, collaborate and discuss these topics well together. So Andrew or Paul, you want to kick us off?
I just want to note before we start that I had to wrestle this away from Mike because he really wanted to lead this activity. So, all right. So first of all, did anyone else, as other people were sharing their jobs, want to like jump in and say, "Oh, I did that," and I have to share one story because I also did a paper route. I grew up in North Dakota though, and so these lucky people got to ride bikes around and throw papers. We had to climb through snow drifts and put them like inside people's double doors. And I also want to note that I fired my brother, who had hired me to do the paper route with him. I was in 8th grade, and he would wake up and I would come in there and say, "Hey, let's go do the route." And he'd say, "I'm just too tired. You do it today, I'll do it tomorrow." And then I'd come back the next day and he'd say, "You just do this week, I'll do next week. And then you do this month, I'll do next month." So we had to sit down with my parents and fire him. So it's the only time I've ever fired anybody. All right, so the activity we're going to do is based around communication and just a little bit about how everybody's different in the way that they prefer to receive communication, to give communication. And I want to give kind of an example of something that happened yesterday. I was talking to 2 of the people on my team, and they were both relaying a conversation they had with a third person and saying, "Oh, we talked about this thing, and she really wants us to do this," is what one of the people said. And then the other person said, "No, no, 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 she really didn't want us to do that." And then the first person said, "It's really funny how 2 people could be sitting here in the same conversation and have come with 2 different conclusions from it." And I think that's fairly common. So Paul, I don't know if you want to pass out these things. What we're going to have you do first is hopefully you have a writing utensil. If not, Chris can help with that. And you're just going to yourself, you're going to see on this card, there's going to be 3 little squares. The first one, you're going to try to put one word that describes your communication style. So that could be like direct, it could be empathetic, it could be analytical. If you're like me, you might not be able to do one word, so you might cheat. The second square is going to be decision-making style. So when you're making a decision, try to describe your style. So is it collaborative? Is it decisive? Is it cautious? And then the third one is what makes you feel heard and respected when you're in a conversation. So just take a couple minutes, think about that, and write those down. We'll take about 1 more minute. All right, everyone ready? Now the part you've all been waiting for. Let's all stand up and find a partner, and we get to share with each other. And let's try to not make it like my junior high dances where everybody on this side stays on this side and everybody on that side stays on that side. Probably be good to mix it up a little bit. So find a partner and share. And I'd encourage you too to ask some follow-up questions, learn more about them. Let me bring everyone back here. It's good to talk to you. All right, everyone. Now I'm going to make you, well, finish up. You got about 15 seconds to go ahead and finish up if you're not done. Do. I was going to do the girl from Ipanema. Do. All right, stay with your partner, please, if you could. Now I'm going to make people share something, some kind of a takeaway from your conversation, whether it's something that the person said that was interesting, or what kind of a takeaway was for you from your conversation. So I'm going to start at the far end with Brian and Kirsty. I can relate to that too, because when I started my first day in this job, I'd been in 3 other classified jobs before this one. My first day as a supervisor, I walked into the staff room, and as soon as I walked in, everybody stopped talking, and I was like, come on, just because the title. Anyway, Curtis, Susan, or whoever's, I don't know who you're paired up with down there. It's okay. I feel validated.
Being heard and respected is validating other person, making sure that you don't just one up their story. You heard something, oh, this made me, this is what I did and it was worse. That's not validating. Making sure that you validate and they know you did your.
And Lisa talked about her communication. I loved it because you just right away said clear, concise, direct. And it was clear and concise and direct, but also equitable. And when it comes to decision making, too, making sure that everybody's needs are being considered. And so sometimes, in order for people to be hearing, there might be a language barrier or things like that. So making sure those things are considered. Yeah, and then some interesting stories about the military too.
And then I think also decision making. So, and I think we also distinguished, at least I did, kind of what we do just might be a little over analytical in our personal lives about decisions. And then once you come to them, you're kind of like, that's it. Versus at work, you have to be more flexible and things are a little more, you have to make decisions. So I have to make things a little more right away versus maybe getting all the information, but trying to, but also having to be a little more.
And making sure that you acknowledge that the person spoke to you. Don't just walk away and looking at your phone. I want to know that you heard me and we were both on the same page with that as well.
So being a bus driver, you have to speak loud at times. So it's direct speaking is my communication style. But when it comes to decision making, I'm presently working with Greg Nelson down at middle school down there, because I ended up having to do a seating chart, first one ever, for middle schoolers. So decision making, he and I have been working back and forth, because obviously he knows that I sent him a list. And he said, well, he gave me groups of boys that couldn't sit near each other. So I've been collaborating, and now we have the plan in place. And feeling heard and respected, well, I'm a school bus driver. It's kind of the sometimes issue. It's virtually all the time, though, with the parents. All the time with the parents.
Yeah, shockingly, middle schoolers misbehaving. We had a little bit to converse about, but I do think that idea of like being pragmatic and recognizing the benefit for supporting our students, using the tools that we have provided. Kind of this year, how we were saying the benefit of that new seating chart tool on the bus has been a game changer. Thank you, IT.
I get zero credit for that.
In terms of communication style, BJ's was, I think, well together. BJ, it is listening in. I agree.
All right, thank you. We were talking too about what you alluded to is like coming from the military. I work with people from the military and they come in here and they're always sort of flabbergasted. Like they come from an environment where you give orders and you take orders. And so here you come and you give a decision and people are like, well, no, I don't like this part of it, this part of it. And they're like, that's not how it's supposed to work. But, all right, well, thank you, everyone. You can go back to your spots. And since I have the mic, I get the soapbox, right? So one of the things I've been thinking about just in my personal life when it comes to communication is, and Lisa and I were talking about, is the idea of validation and thinking about how as humans, I think we all have this need to feel seen and heard and validated. And yet as humans, we're also like really bad at giving other humans validation at times. And so that's just something I've been thinking about. Another last story. Can I tell one more story? Oh yeah. All right, everybody, settle in for a while here. No, when I was in college, I had a professor who told the story about being from New York City and his wife, I'm from North Dakota. His wife was from North Dakota. And he said they went to a restaurant in North Dakota and it's her and her family and then him. And so they sit down, the server brings all the food and the server comes over and says, how is everything? And he right away says, well, the bread's kind of hard and the pasta's overcooked. And everybody at the table just puts their heads down like this. And his wife is like elbowing him under the table. And then the server turns and says, oh, okay. And then turns and walks away. And then his wife's like, what are you doing? And he said, what do you mean? And she said, why did you say that? And he said, because she asked how it was and I told her. And she's like, no, when they ask how it is, you say it's good and then they walk away and leave. And that's how it's supposed to work. And he's like, well, that's not how it works where I come from, like culturally in New York City. Like you tell the truth, you're just direct and you tell them those things. And so then he talked about conversely being in New York City and her stepping up to order at a deli and kind of doing this sort of North Dakota soft, polite, nice thing. And the person at the deli being like, I can't hear you. What do you need? You know, being very direct. And I think that also is an element. There's cultural differences. There's familial differences. There's all those types of things that factor into our communication. All right. So anyways, let's all use these ideas throughout bargaining. I think that's the point. Am I done now? Time's up? Okay.
All right, thanks everyone. Next on our agenda is ground rules. I believe our OSEA colleagues are kicking us off with that one.
Yes, we are. We also just realized I didn't ask Chris to print up for you guys to have a copy to view while we were talking. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I will send you.
I know, you're very good at a lot of things.
And we still call dibs on blue paper, just say. This one doesn't have to be blue, but in just calling dibs right now or later.
All right. Should be headed your way.
Thank you, Chris.
Who's Ted? Just kidding. I was gonna say, I can just start going through all the jobs I did. Paper out, delivered dry cleaning. We had a big flood in my hometown my junior year of high school. They had to cancel school the last month of school. And then people didn't apparently want to take their dry cleaning and pick it up. So I got to deliver dry cleaning to people. That was fun.
I can go on another communication tangent. My in-laws family are a very, I think, Swedish, Norwegian, Scandinavian type family. And they would always have a big gathering on Christmas Eve. And I don't know how many familiar you are with lutefisk. Well, my wife's grandmother would always be bringing it, and everyone would just kind of put it on the plate. And so I was one time on Christmas Eve, I was helping grandma through the buffet line, and we got to the lutefisk. And I was like, all right, would you like some of this? And she goes, oh no, I can't stand the stuff. Really? You've been bringing it for she was like, oh yeah, my husband loved it, but you know, he passed in 1992. And so everyone for the past 15 years had just been kind of sucking it down because of that North Dakota, like you smile, you say it's good, and you move on. But then after that, no more lutefisk.
Anyone else have a story? Okay, I'm going to tell another story. Then there was a time when I was sitting in my family, even though we're Norwegian and North Dakotan, like there's no space in a conversation if it's cousins and uncles and aunts and grandparents gathered around, like everybody's telling stories and laughing and things. And I remember the first time I was sitting with a family, and it was same thing, cousins, uncles, and aunts sitting around, and it was just quiet. And like for me, my skin just started crawling because there was like 5 seconds of silence in it. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a disaster. These people are all probably mad that they came here. And then I realized, oh no, they just like to sit in silence sometimes, and they're totally fine with that. Exactly. It's totally uncomfortable if we just sit here in silence and stare.
So my first teaching job was in South America in Medellin, Colombia. I went to Western Oregon University, and they had a relationship with this school in South America. And so a lot of Western Oregon grads went down there and taught for 2 years. So I'm in this school in Colombia. Colombia is not a place, that was during Pablo Escobar's time, and it was not a place where Americans were at all. There was no McDonald's, nothing. Even the DEA had left the country because it was just not a place for that. So it was very unusual to be there and be an American. And in this school, there were a lot of Colombian teachers that taught in Spanish, but there were also a lot of American teachers that taught in English. And so one day, this Colombian teacher named Carlos came to me and he goes, Susan, working in this school is really hard because everybody just assumes you speak English, and I don't speak English. So you got to help me out. You know, these American teachers will come into the staff room and they're going to say stuff to me, and I just get the deer in the headlights. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to say anything. And so I said, Carlos, all right, listen, repeat after me. I know what you mean. He goes, I know what you mean. It was like all one word, you know, I know what you mean. And so we practiced it. And he comes back a week later, he goes, that really works. That's awesome. People come into staff, they're like, oh, you're right. I know what you mean. Okay, we're good. We're just going on. So it's a good little trick.
Okay, now I gotta add one more to that. Something that works in parties, plug your ears, Brian, is if you walk into a conversation, you can't tell what they say, just say, well, technically that's illegal. And it works most of the time.
I like their story time intermission. Thank you, Chris, for going to get those. Sorry you missed out on all these juicy stories. So I just was thinking I would read through them, and then afterwards, if people have questions, we can circle back to whatever anybody has. For open sessions, all sessions shall be open to the public. The parties may mutually agree to close sessions. All visitors will sign in on the form provided. Visitors shall be quiet and courteous. The negotiations shall be live streamed to the public. During open sessions, visitors will be provided with printed information at the time of discussion. Minutes and exchanged articles will be posted to the district website within 2 business days of each session. Mutual respect, team members will listen with respect to each speaker, and individuals shall refrain from side conversations during the bargaining sessions. All those involved at the table will endeavor to focus on issues and solutions rather than individuals. Meeting dates and times. Starting and ending times will be set in advance for each meeting, but times may be extended by mutual consent. Future meeting dates shall be reviewed at the close of each session. If pre-planned meetings are canceled or rescheduled, OSEA members shall retain their protected time release without penalty to prepare. Tentative agreements. Tentative agreements will be recorded and dated once consensus is reached on an issue. Exchange of information. Requested information will be supplied in a timely and reasonable manner. When information is requested, the parties will specify the timeline and the person responsible for retrieving the data. Caucuses. Caucuses may be called as needed by either side during the negotiations. Resources. Resource persons with information related to the agenda may be called in by either team to provide information. Is there any questions or understandings?
Thank you. Just a question on the opening sessions, the live streaming, as we agreed to do the audio recording. Is that the intent there?
Upon further discussion with our entire team and in conversation with membership, the membership had asked us to reassert that as the majority of BSD meetings are live streamed and open, the public ones, and as BEA's opening sessions were also live streamed, we're just looking to continue in the tradition of transparency and openness in those in these negotiations that are seen in other important business proceedings of the district. And our members have a vested interest in seeing that continue. We were hoping that you would as well.
Thank you for that background. I think we share the commitment to being open and respectful and transparency in the process. Just want to revisit the reasons that we agreed upon originally for the audio is that we want to be able to engage in conversation, you know, as we talked about in our communication styles, directly, collaboratively, and without any hindrances to that process. And so where we felt a good middle ground was staggering the meeting time so that individuals can have access to join us in person if they so desire, and then also providing the full audio recording so that individuals who are interested can still access the content of what was shared through the negotiations, kind of at their leisure in a podcast type format, if you will. And so we definitely want to encourage openness and transparency, but also make sure that we are engaging in collaboration and communication in a way that facilitates an open dialogue and ability to just be thoroughly engaged and comfortable in the conversations.
I appreciate the context from your team about live stream, and I think we had not expected that you would have that request in the ground rules, and so it's good to hear your reasoning behind that, and it probably is going to be good for us to have some caucus time before we respond to that suggestion.
While you caucus about that too, just the reality of whatever you guys decide, if we are just some parameters around whatever the decision is on when, whether it's a live stream or an audio recording, when and where those will be posted. Our interest is that it would be similar to the language around when we are sharing our article information, that 2-day business day at the most. But while you discuss that, if you could get some parameters around what posting and sharing would look like, that would also help our team.
Another piece that I might have missed, but I don't know that it has to be in the ground rules, but it does have to be understood and agreed on is the date where we will mutually agree that the clock starts. I didn't see it. Did I miss it in here?
No, it's not laid out in there. My assumption would be that it would be when we exchange official proposals, which is, as my understanding.
So March, our next session.
Presuming that's when official proposals are exchanged, yeah.
Okay. And would you have any objection to us just stating that in the ground rules, just for clarity?
No, I don't see any reason why.
Okay. Perfect.
I think one of the things that membership has talked about in regards to live streaming is the accessibility of live stream versus audio only. Folks who need things like closed captioning and potentially even lip reading to be able to understand the sessions is a big thing that they will not be able to get from audio only recording. It also just gives people the ability to rewatch back on their own time whenever they have the ability to, and is a much more accessible way to continue the transparency and collaborative nature that we hope to have during this bargaining process.
I was going to add to that also, there are some ways for translations too, for people that is English as a second language to translate what is being said. So,
I would add that most communication is nonverbal. And so by offering an audio only version, we're cutting out a majority potentially of what's actually going on. A full understanding isn't available without the video being included.
I know you said you probably will need some time to discuss, just some minor procedural food for thought as well. I think looking at each other, we can get a sense of who's speaking when, but we also are responsible to about 2,000 other people who some have met us and some have not. It's going to be fairly difficult for them to distinguish who's speaking when if they're engaging with an audio recording after the fact. And I don't think it's probably going to be particularly effective or reasonable for every one of us to say our name before we start talking. I don't think we'll get in a good habit of doing that. So food for thought as you consider.
Right. When you're leading the event, I would say that I'm also going to set a bad example because my voice is very distinguishable. So I will not be saying my name every time I speak because everyone does know when I'm speaking because of this raspy voice. But yes, I agree that all of us trying to, especially once we're in the thick of negotiations, saying our names before or after we speak is going to be, would be quite a challenge. Liz, maybe you can model for us. Besides the live streaming, which we respect the time for you guys to chat about that, is there anything else on here? And then adding the piece around when our timeline would start, is there any other pieces you guys have questions or does everything feel reasonable? I think I really want to draw up attention, especially to if meetings have to change. We would obviously hope that we don't have to, but understand that emergencies happen in our district. All of us have lots of responsibilities to a lot of our community. But just really making sure that we need this protection for our staff that, similar to last year when we had to cancel a session, some administration wanted their team back. We respect that our buildings are important, but so is our bargaining time and it is protected. So just making sure that we have that support that if an admin hears that it's canceled, that we are still working and we will be using that time to caucus and prepare to hopefully not extend out the process. And we recognize that day-to-day operations that messes up in our building, but also the longer that we don't do the work, the longer we're still out. So it's not behooving anyone. So having your support to any admin who are questioning my team would be helpful.
Team, any other questions? So we also have a draft of ground rules and we'll cover some of the topics that we just discussed as well. We'll hand out our draft and then I think we probably each take some time to discuss and dissect what we see. Thank you. I think there's a lot of similarities between the documents. So. All right, so I'll just do a quick overview of ours. We did start with the mission statement. Again, I think it's just important that we center ourselves that in the really the final line that this is a partnership aimed at serving the needs of the students and the community. Just every opportunity that we have to focus around, we are all here in our varying roles with the purpose of supporting students. And so keeping that at the center of our thoughts and our conversations, keeping students at the center is really important. We have many of the same or similar sections in our drafts, so I won't necessarily go through all of them. But what I noted as some differences is we both state the posting to the district website within 2 business days. I believe that is in ours. Further down in the ground rules, we did add a section on audio recording, so you have that information that would follow the same format being posted within 2 business days, if that's the direction that we move forward with. We did put language in here about the timeline, and with the start being March 10th, that's what we're, at least for now, decided as our first exchange of information. So just to call that out for clarity's sake as we progress through this. And then similar information regarding caucuses and resources. We did add a line in resources to, just as a courtesy, provide the other team with notice of if you're bringing in a guest speaker or presenter, that some notice is provided prior to the occurrence. Team, any other highlights anybody would like to share? Subcommittees, so calling out the open versus closed session, that subcommittees would be closed to the public, caucuses as well. So these sessions, everything in this room would be open, and then subcommittees, if they form and happen, would be closed. And really, that would be mutually agreed upon. We decide to form a subcommittee mutually, and then that group would then share out to the broader group.
One question. If the intent is with the subcommittees that they'll really only occur if we mutually agree later on that they're going to occur, then could we not at that point also set our expectations for that subcommittee? Does it necessarily need specifically to be laid out in advance? I trust in our ability to make those decisions should it become necessary.
Thank you. Yeah.
We were just clarifying some rules on our caucus that don't need to really be on just mutual agreement between us, because I don't have to tell you what I'm saying back there.
I like the concise nature of your document. I'll go back to my communication style. I appreciate that. All right. Any other questions, either side? Anyone?
Just before we go back to discuss, what is the intent on the communication piece about simultaneously providing copies of any communication? Just to speak to what you're looking for out of that.
Yeah, it's just something that we have over the years agreed upon when we've been in negotiations, and it just helps all of us stay grounded in what's being communicated. It isn't always something that we come to agree with ahead of time, but it's good for us to just be clear about whether we are or aren't going to be sharing that communication. We can live with it either way, but it does provide some transparency when we know what you're communicating and you know what we're communicating, since your members and our employees are a shared interest group for all of us. So I don't know if that helps. Looks like from your face, I might have made it more confusing.
I think I've enough to go on. Thank you.
I think that's all for now. I think we just have some discussions to have in caucus with the team. We're all trying to chat at each other, but it's gonna be easier just to do it verbally.
Sounds good. Well, shall we,
I think we should keep going agenda. Is there any reason not to? And
But-
then go to caucus?
we have a couple other topics ahead of us that we could probably, that each team sharing out their proposal interests, and then we can, what do y'all think? Move through those and then do a lunch/caucus
Sounds good to me.
combined?
Sure.
Not to put a fly in the ointment, but we do have a presentation. So I have a newer computer now, so it should be easier. You don't have to sit on the floor? I don't know.
No, BJ, she's not sitting on the floor. You better help her.
That door may lock, but
I promise I won't still tell a story, but sometimes I'm gonna stand, but it's because I have a bad back. And so I stand a lot in meetings because of that. So just never think it's like it's disinterest or anything like that, just a FYI.
We're a table full of very neurodivergent people. I stand up and fidget, we all. So I think we're all good. We're adults, we all. Stand up and move around.
I found myself when I started joining leadership meetings, when I was standing, I found myself thinking, everybody thinks I'm probably trying to get out of here. So I'd be like the one that's like super engaged like this to make sure they know like I'm with you.
I got it. All right. We have prepared some remarks for you based on conversations that we've had with our membership, as well as the bargaining survey we circulated, which brought us to a set of priorities that we chose to make into an acronym. So we'd like to tell you about why classified staff are stars and why you should consider expanding and improving their workplace to more accurately befit the stars that you see before you today. You're going to see, hopefully, some visuals to this effect going up around the district. And you may notice that a chunk of us are wearing some today. We just want to give you some context for what you're going to be seeing around and some things that you can expect to hear back if you do, in fact, ask classified staff around the district why. I'm going to throw it to Dina to talk about safety.
Lots of you know that this is something that's near and dear to my heart recently, having been hurt at work this year. Safety, we need classified representation on safety committees. We need environmental safety for all staff. Ensuring staff access to input on the training and implement specialized student plans. Work shouldn't hurt.
Thanks, Dina. Yeah. You'll see proposals on a number of different areas reflecting these kind of priorities in terms of what folks need in terms of workplace safety. And I believe Stephanie is going to talk to us about training.
Okay, start over. So trainings, first aid training on paid time for special education, de-escalation training, and plan review. Also professional development support for all classified staff.
Absolutely. We are obviously looking to make sure that classified staff feel they have the necessary tools to do the work that they do. They are, by and large, very excellent at finding the ways to get things done either way. But the more training and preparedness that they have, the safer and more effective they'll be in the roles that they occupy. Diana, if you would talk to us about accountability.
So in dealing with accountability, we're looking at improving transparency and classified participation in important workplace decisions, no subcontracting out, the communication expectations, and bargaining transparency and accessibility to all.
And I have a pop quiz for anyone that's not on the OSEA side of the table. What building is this picture taken in? There you go. Man, I was just about to say, Curtis, you're not going to get barbecue if you don't have the right answer.
Yeah. Obviously, if you can see it, I know the lighting in the picture is not the greatest because I took it with my phone. But the mural says, together we can achieve more. Our hope is that through our proposals around accountability, we continue to be a collaborative partner in making decisions that affect classified employees, students, and all other staff in the district as well. All right. Retention. BJ, you want to talk to us about retention?
Yeah, retention, being here for a long time, I'm sure other people like Martin been here a long time as well. Retention's big throughout the district, but we just want to, for just cause, increase compensation, incentives to remain with the district, compensation for valuable, additional skills, and year-round exempt staff retention.
I do just want to say, it's not the best graphic I've ever made in my life, but did do some rough back of the envelope calculations and came up with about 121 years of BSD experience on this side of the table, the folks that are looking at you right now. And that's kind of spread around in a variety of different ways. But if you kind of average it out, that's at least 11 years a person. And I know some folks are newer and some folks have been here a long time. So there's a lot of experience and a lot of value that classified staff bring, and we're just interested in making sure that that's fairly compensated and respected and valued. And then I think Lisa was going to close us out with support.
Yeah, so on our support, we want equity, which will be defining family and more of what that is, additional benefit supports, and baseline expectations around duties, locations, and schedules.
As we bring proposals, we hope it will be made clear to y'all that this is something that really sort of underlines the kind of communication and clarity that folks need to feel supported in the important work that they do. I know folks in all walks of classified life spend a lot of time thinking about ways that they can be supportive to students and to their colleagues in certified and administrative classifications. And we will be bringing proposals that really kind of underline what it takes to make that kind of support possible for folks to continue to provide. Let me know if I missed anything or glossed over anything that y'all wanted to say. All right, I think that's it for our presentation. We, of course, welcome any questions you have.
Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate the clarity and the visuals and the reflection and thought that went into that. So that's very helpful. Thank you all for sharing that with us. Any questions, team? And Teresa, I disagree. I think it was a great visual. Are you sharing out which articles you're intending to bring forward at this point?
That is our presentation. That is
Okay.
what we have to share.
All right. Ours is we do not have a slideshow, and now I feel humbled by your amazing product there. In our conversations as well, our priorities continue to be centered on students and really creating a environment and maintaining an environment that focuses on the strengths and success of our current and future students, the health of the district in being able to meet the needs of our students moving forward and currently as well, and also supporting our staff. And so ensuring that we have an environment both right now and in the future for which all populations will find success in Beaverton School District. So that is a overview of our priority. I really, on a more personal level, appreciate the focus on equity as well, and that your team has started with a wording of the contract that moves us in a direction of having language that is more inclusive and easier to understand. And so just really appreciate that initial step in the direction of of equity and looking at how the work we do here has such a broad impact. So thank you for that. We will be bringing forward a series of articles at our next session. And again, everything that we are bringing forth will be through the lens of focusing on the success of our students, our staff, and the community as a whole as we move forward.
I will just add, all of that also will be trying to, of course, be fiscally responsible and be as fair as we can be to our employees. I think we have a mutual interest with you in the retention and the working conditions and the safety of our students, and really the compensation being as competitive as it can be. And we also want to make sure that's balanced with the long range and short range fiscal realities so that we're being responsible long term as well.
All right. Well, with that, we may be at a point in our agenda where we can have a caucus time and potentially lunch, depending on how long we are there. Unless there's anything else that either side would like to add, then we can move into caucus and we'll text when we're ready to regroup.
Yeah, I think we're ready to move into caucus and do lunch and then check in with each other maybe between 12:30 and 1.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully everybody enjoyed lunch and some sunshine. Welcome back. So I think our afternoon, we have a connector activity ahead of us. And also we have a draft response to the ground rules we'd like to share. Is there anything else that we have ahead of us? Wonderful. Well, let's. Whatever it was sounded fun. Okay. All right, we will pass out our draft ground rules and then I'll walk you through the document together.
Look at that. How convenient.
All right, everybody have a copy? So we went through, we really appreciate the ground rules that you brought forward as well, and heard the dialogue and really tried to capture the points that we hear to be a high priority, and also maintain aspects of it that are a priority for us as well. And so I'll start at the top and just walk through it. We do want to maintain the opening mission statement. We think it's important to ground ourselves in that work by having the collective mission statement. The next session, the open and closed sessions, is largely the same. We did keep language stating specifically there shall be no questions or comments by visitors during the bargaining sessions. Felt it's important to call that piece out. We shifted some language from yours into a new section that we called virtual access. We hear you that having live streaming is a priority for many, and that you're hearing that from many members as well. And so we are open to having the sessions live streamed. This is a pivot for us, and we need to involve community involvement to make sure that they're up and ready for that. And so we'll have those conversations. I can't promise that they have the 10th free for that or not at this point, but we'll have that conversation to move forward with live streaming with that. Along the lines of live streaming, we also kept a line that it was in another section of ours, but added it here about audience members not doing electronic recording during the sessions. We feel that by having the live stream and it'll be recorded, there's really no need for people to potentially have their phone out and recording and creating alternate versions of the film. So we'd like to maintain that the recordings we'll do it and we'll post those, but that should be the only recordings that are made. Along with that, in our earlier discussions that led to an agreement around not doing virtual or live streaming and instead doing the audio recordings, we had agreed to some changes in the meeting formats. And so we'd like to go back to a consistent bargaining schedule. So maintaining the dates that we've already agreed upon, but keep the hours from 10 to 4. We discussed staggering them earlier so that people could have access to view it in person based on their shift. But now with the live streaming and an opportunity to view it subsequently via recorded format, everybody would have access to be able to have a visual. And then also with our community involvement, being able to have a consistent schedule that is within the standard workday allows us to avoid bringing in overtime and paying people to be here beyond the 4 o'clock time.
Curtis, one other piece with that. Curtis mentioned that in shifting to live stream, we do have to make sure that the 10th works for CCNI, but that's true for all the dates. So I learned this in previous negotiations that we can't take for granted CCNI's availability. So all of our dates, we'll try to keep what we have on the docket, but just know until we get that solidified with CCI that there might be some changes ahead.
Thank you, Susan. Right now, in full transparency, Andrew is doing the audio recording, so we're able to rely on him being here because he's part of our team. But these dates haven't been vetted with CCNI for live streaming, so we will do that. The next section, mutual respect, I think is largely the same. Meeting dates and times, largely the same. We did add a line following your proposed addition of the OSEA team members will retain their protected time release when a meeting is canceled. We felt it was important to call out that if we are the ones canceling the meeting, that may be different than if you all are having to cancel a meeting. And so we added language there that says when it's canceled by the district, and then also a time frame just to keep it reasonable so that if we are, for example, looking at right now a April change or cancellation, that is far out enough where we could be planful of that. But if it's a short-term notice, less than a week by the district, then we'll continue to honor that release time. And then tentative agreements, exchange of information, and caucuses are the same. On the backside, resources, we removed the at least 24 hours notice will be provided for bringing in a guest, so it aligns with your proposed language. And then we maintained keeping the timeline on there. We think it's important to document our timeline. And so we would like to keep that as part of this document as well. So that's our proposed draft. Any questions?
I have a question around the timeline. With the ground rules stating here, does your team feel like when we approach summertime, say we agreed to this version and we decide, hey, we don't want to pause or we do want to pause over the summer break, depending on where we are or what situations are going on, people's summer work, things like that. Do you feel that we'd be able to have that conversation in summertime to be discussing that, even if we aren't putting it here on this ground rules, having that discussion of breaking or not?
Yeah, we've done that in the past and we can definitely do that. And one way to make it a little more open-ended here would be agreeing when it starts, but omitting our second sentence there about 150 days. At least then we're in agreement that our timeline starts the first time that we're exchanging proposals And then we can work together if there are any pauses in the timeline. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question to, I mean, we've talked to the team, but in the idea, if we were changing our sessions to 10 to 4, I believe that we would still ask to possibly still have a caucus space for those differential 2 hours, for the 2 hours before, so that we could be prepared in caucus to be able to be ready at 10 a.m. so that we aren't spending another hour or two starting that already shortened session in caucus.
I think that would be appreciated, just, and I think that's our collective focus as well, that we maximize the time we have together. So the caucus time beforehand, I think the spaces are already reserved starting at 8 a.m. So.
Or will be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think at this time, I guess we could ask if we want to go do a caucus for us to chat this, or if you guys would prefer we did our activity first and then go break to chat with and have conversations about your guys' proposal.
Yeah. Either sounds great, whichever you all prefer.
Team? All right. Well, we'll go caucus and get this
Sounds
answer
good.
back, and we'll check in with you soon.
See you in a bit.
Thank you. Why did the chicken cross the playground? To get to the other slide. That's me and Max's joke at Ace. Tell him the same joke every time.
Here's my 5th grade daughter's joke. What's the slipperiest country? Greece.
All right. So we went through and made a couple revisions, and I don't think it matters if it's in color or not. I feel like you can still see the highlight and the strikeouts. So for us, we kept, the mission statement. We agree that that's, common ground and something we will move forward with. In our open sessions, we kind of felt like with this last proposal you brought us, that the last line you had added about if either team believes the process is being compromised, that kind of covers what was the part that we struck out about no disruptive behavior will be permitted. There shall be no questions or comments by visitors during bargaining sessions. Visitors shall sit in the designated area. I feel like we feel like visitors will sign in the form provided. Visitors shall be quiet and courteous. We kind of feel like that piece, and then the last piece about if we feel there's a disruption that we can fix that. We felt like that was kind of overstating. For virtual access, we changed just the language to recorded live streams, just to help make it very clear. The wording was a little fuzzy. And then when we go down to meeting dates and times, we just went with the same language that we have in our contract, that we provide 5 days notice to our admin when giving time release or supervisors. So we just made the language match so it was equal on both sides. And then in our timeline, we switched the language to beginning March 10th, provided that is the first day proposals are exchanged. Should this exchange occur after March 10th, the 150-day timeline will begin when proposals are first exchanged. Just that piece of you never know. In 2022, we had that ice storm in April, right? So I think we just want to make sure that encapsulates just in case, or if CCI isn't available that day and we do have to change, that our document can just be updated if needed for the exchange of articles. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say thank you. I didn't really need a mic for that. Team, any questions? Yeah. Okay. I think, this looks good. So we can agree to a cleaned up version of this without the strike throughs, and we have ground rules. Well done. Yay. Thanks, everyone. we will follow up with CCI on the schedule and get back to y'all on those dates and what the calendar could look like. And if there's some conflicts, then we'll just be in collaboration about that.
Our team would like to say too, we really appreciate you hearing us with the urge for offering the recording of the live stream, just how really impactful it is to our members. And we understand the change of practice for the hours to make those, and ultimately that is going to be easier for everyone to have those set hours. But we really, really appreciate it. It was something really important to our membership and a lot of our community members as well. So we appreciate you taking the time and coming up with a compromise for us to be able to make it accessible for all of our members so that they are active. We all know the massive amount of emails and things that we all had last year with our insurance change before right when we were beginning bargaining and whatnot. So we also hope that this will help with that transparency piece and making sure that everyone is feeling included, and then also not bombarding so many of us and our amazing classified staff up here in the office that get all of those emails and have to cycle through all of them. So thank you. I know who it is, but would you like to introduce your friend over there? Some of my team is asking who's joined us.
So we have a guest joining us who will be with us throughout bargaining on occasion, really as an observer. Jessica Jones from Business Office. Welcome, Jessica. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself and share your early job with us? Just an early job that stands out in your history. First job. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We all shared that earlier. You missed out, but you could listen to it on the audio recording. All right. I think we're ready for our next activity.
All right, we're going to get a visual set up to go with our icebreaker. So give us just a moment. Look at us. Our haircuts look nice on video.
Chris.
Welcome.
Chris is going to print out a cleanup copy and then we'll take a look at it. And if it looks good, we could sign.
Okay. I'm gonna get there in a second. My computer's not ready. Y'all chill. We just said we're taking a break. God. Wait a second. Sorry guys, give me just a second. In the typical fashion of Google, it wanted me to sign out, sign back in, and refresh everything right as it was my turn, because that's what it loves to do. But it's at 2:30. It's what happens almost every time. Give me just a second. So I think we already kind of started off in the process of, what our first jobs are, how we started working. And I think our team would really like to go forward with bouncing around and asking everyone how, kind of walk through the positions you've held in education, starting off with the first job you had working in education. And in that, maybe also what inspired you to get that first job, or maybe what inspired you once you had that first job. So I will go first, so everyone has time to think for a second. My first job in actual education in the building was actually here in BSD when I started at Beaverton High School and sometime in the teens. I don't know when. But before that, I worked in high need, high behavior, high support group homes for many, many years, supporting a lot of students in the district, within the district. And it was a job I fell into because I've always loved kids. I spent a lot of time supporting after school programs and whatnot. My younger years, supporting the Girl Scouts here. And I fell into group homes because I was like, you're great with kids, come here. And I had no idea it was a high behavior group home and I was gonna walk in and get punched in my first 7 minutes of being there and then a restraint within an hour and then another one and had never been through a safety class. But I fell in love with that job. I fell in love with the hard kids and the hard things and fell in love with special education and worked in group homes just because it's real easy to get sucked in if you've ever worked at one. Until I really wanted to do more and I wanted a more structured environment and I wanted better supports in place that were taking care of kids. That was not the experience I was having in group homes. And so it made me want to really come to the school district that I grew up in as a Title I kid and really found lots of spaces here when I moved up here. And I was just really excited to come back and fulfill that journey. And I've just traveled through my years at BSD. Somebody on your team want to go?
I could share as a group home connection. My first education job was also working for a group home for individuals that really were had physical disabilities, differing needs. And my job was to essentially like a field trip coordinator. I would take them out into the community on various field trips and outings. It was, we'd go to the park and play basketball or go to the mall and just walk around. So it really, I was an undergrad at the time and it was my first education related position. It wasn't for a K-12, but that's where I really fell in love with working with students. It was also one of my first interactions with HR. The van that they gave me to drive around had one of those stickers that said, "How's my driving?" And the number was very legible to a lot of people that I offended with my driving. So I remember getting called in a couple times about people complaining about my driving. So there was that. And then from there, I went to college, finished that, and my first K-12 job was here in Beaverton at Cedar Park. I taught 7th grade science, and then I've been in Beaverton in a variety of roles really since then. So I went from Cedar Park, just really loved the middle school population, loved teaching at the middle school, loved the science focus. And then when at the time health and science opened up, it's now BASE. That just seemed like such a wonderful community and opportunity to try something different. So I moved on to BASE as assistant principal, and then continued my middle school journey at Highland Park Middle School as principal before coming here to Human Resources. That's my journey with one intermission for the state.
So I kind of, here we go. I've always loved working with kids. I was a nanny for a really long time. My first job in education was when my daughter started in preschool. I started subbing in that preschool and then went on within the preschool. There was a program for kids with cochlear implants. And so I started working with that program, and this was down in Texas, and worked with them through 2020 when COVID hit. And then we made the move back to Portland because I born and raised in Portland. And then I stayed home with my daughter to oversee remote school with BSD for the first year we were back. And then I applied and got hired to start the Preschool Promise program at Merlot, and was there for 2 years with them, and then worked summer school in the office at Raleigh Park where my daughter went to school, and then they had an opening and I applied and started there 2 years ago. So that's was that everything I was supposed to cover? Yep.
See, I hate that awkward silence. So I started, like I mentioned before, in North Dakota at my former high school as a classified sub. and then got hired to help out as a special ed assistant. So that was, at the time, they called it the emotionally disturbed room, which is good that they've changed that title. But when I moved to Oregon, I thought I was applying for the same job at Highland Park for a special ed assistant. And then when I came in, they said, actually, we just filled that, but we need somebody to help out with our technology. And so they hired me as what was an instructional assistant, which is now a para, to do that. Then I worked in the IT department as a tech supporting schools, and then as a system administrator supporting all the Apple stuff, and then this job. And I was thinking earlier when you talked about training, I thought about when I worked at that house with people who had autism. My first day on the job, I'd received nothing, and they took me to this room and said, here's Mark. You'll be with him for the next 8 hours. See you later. And I remember like thinking, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Like, he needs to eat probably. What is he going to eat? And I started reading through the binder of stuff, and there was a police report in there talking about how at one point police had tried to restrain him, and he had essentially like beaten up 4 police officers. And I'm like thinking, like, what am I going to do? So yeah, that lack of training was startling. But
All right. My first job in education was here in the Beaverton School District. I worked at Bridges Academy, which is no longer here. But I was a paraeducator one at Bridges Academy, and that was like the perfect place for me. Anybody who doesn't know what Bridges Academy was, it was basically all the kids that had middle school and high school that had been expelled from their primary schools, and any special education student that was awaiting placement that they didn't really know what to do with, were at Bridges Academy. So it was dealing with a lot of high functioning, emotionally vulnerable people. And yeah, it was my first job here. I was a store manager for Home Depot for 13 years. And my ex-wife and I had my daughter, and 2 months of being there, I was like, this isn't where I want to be. I want to get back into the community. We decided that we wanted to do sibling foster care and work with kids. And so I quit my job, and we went from having 6-month-old daughter to having 5 foster kids on top of that in the span of a 3-month period. And then I started working for the Beaverton School District, and yeah, so.
I can go. Mine's not, mine's not super interesting. I was a part-time, I was answered back then an ad in the newspaper for a part-time gig at Forest Grove School District. They were in a position where they were transitioning to the new ERP. They weren't ready to get their financial statements together. They couldn't get them together in time for audit. And I was going to school at Portland State, answered the ad, and thought I'll just do this for a few months, get them squared away. And after that, they asked me to stay, and I've been doing the same work ever since. I think kind of the meaning behind as I graduated from college and looked at other jobs and got offers, I think what kept me in K-12 was that there's more to it than a bottom line and driving shareholder value and pushing paper. There are real lives and real impactful things going on in our community in K-12. So here I am 36 years later.
I'm going to go next after we've changed mics. We both looked down and they were completely off. I'm going to start with what inspired me to get into education first.
Back when I was in preschool, my mom ran a program. I just knew it as the Blue House in Central Oregon, and it was back before inclusion. And so it was a secluded preschool elementary facility with students with disabilities. And her thought was, since they weren't allowed to go into school, she would then bring school-age children there to play and whatnot and teach in that aspect. So I started doing that at about 4 years old. And so growing up with I guess the population of children with disabilities, it didn't even faze me throughout my life. It wasn't something that, it was just, yeah, how it should be. But anyway, and from that point on, I really wanted to be a teacher. I always played teacher. Like I was an only child and all my dolls set up and was teaching them. And so anyway, at 18, I worked in a residential home with adults from Fairview as it wasn't quite closing yet. We're still probably about 5 or 6 years before it completely closed. And that was definitely an eye-opener at 18. So coming into education, it's a different, totally different, but anyway. And from that, I moved into vocational, a lot of job training, social skills, life skills, and whatnot. Then I moved over here from Bend and ran a vocational program for quite a few years in Hillsborough. I had about 23 adults that we did job training and vocational skills with. And then I had children and decided that I still wanted to work in some sort of education, some sort of special education, whatnot. And I really liked that I had summers off and the time off that my kids had off. And so it all kind of correlated. And so I've been with the district for, I don't know, 10 or 11 years, I think, something like that, all in special education.
I came over sideways into education about 17 years ago. My earlier career was in private sector and then municipal in communications. I was an editor and then a public information officer for several years. And I came over into education right when the housing bubble burst, and then spent the next multiple years in really hard budget times with constant cuts and just really, really difficult times for education. And after sticking through that, things turned around. But I made the move over into education, was really inspired by a shift from more reactive work to proactive work and working in education where we're, educating students, we're the future generation rather than reacting to crises just all crises in the community. So I worked in Eugene School District for many years. I came in as a communications specialist, like a communications officer, like the Shelley Bailey Shaw is here, was the job I did for a lot of years. And then eventually was chief of staff in Eugene for several years before coming to Beaverton.
My journey through education started in like 2005, 2006, when I interviewed here at Beaverton, just as a classified sub. At the time, I had my associate's degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had one daughter at the time, and my mom was in the process of leaving the district. She also worked as a classified employee for a number of years, and was the one that encouraged me to apply. And from there, I got a full-time position at Meadow Park in the program as a Para 2 or instructional assistant at the time, but a Para 2 position in what we no longer have now is the ILC, Independent Learning Center. And I lost my train of thought because I'm not sure if that's the right acronym definition. Anyways, and from there, I spent 17 years in special ed, and recently when COVID hit and I was doing a lot of one-on-one with the distance learning, I thought, I'm basically teaching. Why can't I go back to school and become a teacher? So that started my journey with returning to school, and I graduated from PSU last March and immediately went into grad school. I'm at Lewis and Clark. So I have, yeah, the journey has been long, but it's not over. And so I'm really excited. I love, love, love my classified roles that I've played, and yeah, everything about it.
I'll go next. It looks like this mic is on its last legs also. This wasn't a job, but the first experience I had that was about education was when I was in 6th grade. Our teacher had some of us work as what they called cross-age tutors, working with kindergarten students who didn't speak English. And so that was my first quasi-educational experience as a 6th grader working with kindergartners. I loved it. And then I made all of the office professionals, I entertained them the other day when they were in their training, and I told them that for 2 years in high school, I was a TA with the registrar, and I was handling the CUME files. So they got a big kick out of that. Kind of dates me a little bit. We don't have students handling the CUME files anymore. Had a really close relationship with the registrar. She liked to call me Girl Wonder. Anyway, then I went to college, and my first experience in the schools was I put myself through college as a waitress and also with a number of other jobs. I can really relate to the people that had lots of jobs. I worked as a chairside dental assistant. I worked as a medical receptionist. I worked on a paint crew, working with painting apartments. I worked in construction. And then I made it through college, and my first job after college was as a teacher. I was a teacher for 15 years. Then I was a principal for 12 years, and now I've been in HR for 12 years. So that's a lot of years. And I will just add a last piece that while I was in college, among all those other jobs, my work study job was running the student employment office. So kind of connects to HR. So there are just some themes that all connect there.
Thank you. So my story, those are my notes. I took notes. I knew when I was in 2nd grade that I wanted to be a teacher. It was all I ever wanted to do. And I remember as a child practicing reading out loud to my imaginary students because I didn't know anything about educators except that teachers had to be really good readers. They had to have an engaging reading voice. In high school, every job I've had aside from working in the family business has been at least tangentially related to education. In high school, I earned credit by volunteering in the elementary school across the street. When I started college, I didn't want to give that up. So I went back and volunteered at another elementary school where I worked in a role very similar to a para 1 role. After finishing my degree in education, I taught 4th grade for 3 years and stepped aside to raise my family of 4 BSD grads. During that time, I taught group fitness classes. In college, I was a summer camp counselor. I worked as for our county literacy agency had a volunteer position where you could volunteer as an ESL tutor for immigrant adults. I served on the governing board of my children's preschool. I co-owned a Taekwondo school. I was a school volunteer. And when it became obvious that it was time to come back to work full time, my volunteer work had led me to fall in love with the library. And so I kind of came full circle to that little girl who just wanted to read out loud and have kids fall in love with books and reading. And I volunteered, or I substituted my first year because I wasn't willing to give up on my volunteer gigs to come back full time. I've now been at Sato in the library for 8 years and also work part-time as a personal support worker for an adult with Down syndrome.
Oh, we're running out of battery too. Well, mine's pretty quick. So I graduated with a degree in biology. I had done health careers at Beaver High School and thought I was going to go that direction, and then didn't wind up using my biology degree much. So I worked as a legal secretary for many years before figuring out how to get back into doing something, and I landed on dietetics. So I went back to school in my early 30s to study dietetics and nutrition, and I graduated from my programs, getting my master's degree and doing that in 2010. And same as Carrie here, weren't a lot of jobs in 2010. So I kind of applied for anything that was out there, and there was a supervisor position at Beaver School District in the Nutrition Services Department. And so that's how I got into K-12. But I've been here now 14 years, and I love it. There's something new every day in school nutrition. There's always changes. It's always something new, something different, and really, I love the fact that this can be like the best part of Kids Day is the part that we help provide, and that we can help students succeed with the sort of basics that they can, enjoy, and then also help them through their day. So that's why I've stuck with it, and that's why I'm going to be in probably school nutrition for the rest of my career too. So.
So my first part of being in education, as you all know, like I said, was when I graduated. I got hired onto the school district as a counseling aide for the summer of when I graduated. After that, we were in California, so I helped our counselor also do field trips. I had to figure out how to make field trips to Hollywood educational. So things like that when we were going to a Judge Judy taping or something, making sure that we knew, okay, now we're learning about the legal process, and that's the reason that we're going. So trying to figure out how we could get those field trips through was one of my first parts of education. And then my daughters are now in 6th and 8th grade, but during COVID, I was volunteering at the cafeteria, and I was volunteering 12 hours a week because they needed help. And when I saw the kitchen was needing help, I went and bought some shoes that I could work in the kitchen to help them. I went and got my food handler's card before anything. And I told the lead, I was like, here's my food handler's card, here's everything I have. What do you guys need? Is there a way that I can volunteer in the kitchen to help you? Because I see you need help. So after about 3 or 4 weeks of doing that, that lead said, you need to go get a job. You need to go apply. So I hadn't even thought that I could actually do that because I was thinking school people, I can't be a school person. It's like, yeah, I did that way back then, but so I got that. And then family changes, like things happen, and I became a sub. And when I was a sub, I did not want to stay just in the kitchen because I saw so many other positions. So I cross-trained myself so that I could be a para 1, a para 2, a librarian, and work in the office. So I have all of that in my past, and I've been able to at least pick up a couple shifts in non-nutrition services when I was a sub. And then come back to find out that my family changed again, and I have time to do a full job. So now I am back in nutrition services and I love it because I love being able to see all those kids and being able to provide the food for them so that their brains can work is one of the best things. And the kids love lunchtime. So when they come in through to us, they're almost always smiling. So I love that.
All right. So I kind of stumbled into education as well while working on my undergraduate in biology, doing different jobs in the sciences. Like I liked science, but then I'm like, I don't really like any of these jobs. While lifeguarding, the boss at the time was like, "Hey, you taught swim lessons, right?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Well, this school needs somebody to help out with their high school swim team, so you should call this guy." So it turns out they actually needed a head coach, and it was like, "When can you start?" And it was like 3 days later, here I am coaching a high school team, kind of thinking like, "Oh my gosh." But then that also led me into other things. So while I was coaching, I was also doing a middle school math and science. I was a tutor, which then led to my first position, which I think they wanted to hire me as a science teacher, but it was I got hired as a science teacher and a swim coach. Also, kind of in that era of budget cuts and temporary assignments. So I was a part-time temporary science teacher, swim coach, tennis coach, and a JV rally advisor, also known as like the JV cheer coach. I had no idea what I was doing, but they needed somebody in the building. So stayed, this was in Hillsborough. Really enjoyed my time there coaching, and then spent some time working on district-wide science curriculum before being an assistant principal. And now went down to the middle school after COVID, and have really enjoyed that.
Okay, this one I think is working. We were laughing actually in the back. My first job in elementary school was safety patrol. And I got to do the crossing guard with the flag out in front of the building on the busy street, 4th grade. And the other thing that I loved and everybody talked about as well is 4th and 5th grade, having the opportunity to work in the kitchen every week and get free lunches that whole week. That was awesome. Then up to many other jobs throughout my life. I started as a substitute in Beaverton, and I worked as an instructional assistant, a secretary 2, office assistant 3, department secretary, administrator secretary, management secretary, which then was renamed to office assistant 5, superintendent secretary, executive assistant, and I am now a program specialist. And I was inspired after working in retail to come to the schools, mostly because of my children. I wanted to have a career that would allow me to be consistent with my schedule, one, and ensuring that I could be present for them. And education has offered me that perfect balance. I had 5 children graduate from Beaverton School District schools. And it has also given me the opportunity for my professional growth. When I began my career at BSD, I recognized it as a nurturing opportunity for growth. And I took every opportunity for every class, every training, PD, other things to continuously give me the knowledge that I needed to move up and take on new opportunities.
So my first experience with education work was when my kids were in elementary school. I got pulled into the Art Lit program. And I think it was a good challenge for me because I was the kind of artist that I had 2 siblings that could draw anything and it was beautiful. And when I finished middle school art class, the teacher said, I thought you would be good at art because of your siblings, but you're not. And so I wanted to work with younger people than me who might be on my level. And kindergarten was about my right spot. But I loved running Artlit. I loved working with the students, getting something fun into their daily lives, their classroom experience. Making messes was fun too. And then the parents that I worked with, that was, I think my favorite part was recruiting the parents every year and getting them excited about it, which maybe is why I ended up in HR. So after I'd done Artlit for years and years, I also volunteered in the library a ton, running book fairs. And then when I went back to work, I just wanted to work in an environment like the schools that I had volunteered in, where people supported each other and where the focus was on giving back to the community and making things good for the kids. So that's how I ended up as a sub and got pulled in on an HR project, and they still tease me about it because I was not excited. But they convinced me, and then they couldn't get rid of me. So.
So imagine this, 31 years ago, just about this time of year, my sister and my wife were on the phone, and my wife announces to my sister that I'm going to become a school bus driver. I could hear the laughing still to this day. I left the automotive trade and I went to work in Maine for Laidlaw to start out. I then left them after about 3 months because they were not going to fix a bus that had serious steering component issues. I then went to work for the city of Ellsworth, Maine, 12,000 people, only 9 routes, 13 buses. But I still had my master's certification at that time for automotive. Well, they had a technical school where they taught automotive, diesel mechanics, boat building, carpentry, computer repair, culinary, and nursing. I didn't teach a nursing class or culinary, but I taught at one time or another all the other stuff while I was there. Then a downturn came around, and for financial reasons, Maine was no longer sustainable. So I came here, and I was hired here as a bus driver in February of 2010. And I've been here driving a bus and or training ever since.
Okay. So my first education job was here in Beaverton. 15 years ago, I was hired as a budget accountant, and I've had a couple of other roles until I got to where I am now. I got here I have an accounting degree, and as most college students who have an accounting degree think that you need to go into public accounting, so I did that. And I was an auditor for a firm who does mostly governmental audits. So I did a lot of local cities, counties, and school districts. And while I was there, I said, "Hey, this looks like fun." I was in a school district business office auditing them, and you get to hear about. It was a very small district, so they had all of the different areas. The nutrition was there, and the person who oversaw the bus drivers and all of these ancillary services, their teaching and learning person was in that building as well. So you got to hear about all of it. And I was like, this sounds like a good thing and a way that I can support kids with the skill set that I have. So, and then lucky for me, about 2 weeks later, a position here. And I've heard 2010 come up a couple of times. In 2010, I came in then and I started about now and came into this going, what am I doing? I didn't know what I was doing back then, but here we are. And I have 2 elementary age students, so sometimes I get to go on field trips with them, which is really cool to see just how excited they are and how much they love all of the staff in their buildings and everyone they get to see. My daughter's favorite person is her crossing guard. She loves him and draws him pictures, and it's just really cool to see that. And then occasionally my husband and I coach 8 and under softball, basketball, volleyball. It's fun to have that little piece where I can interact with students as well.
All right, kind of a funny, can you even hear me? Funny story. How I started in the district was I used to work at Par Lumber, and I saw my friend Mick used to work here. He works at the water district now, but I saw him with a couple maintenance people, and I pulled in there and I was talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, you should apply, blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, I've been at Par for a while. Previously, I was at the West Beaverton Sanitary." Anyway, I thought about it and went, and I started here in '06. But I started at Terra Linda in second grade. So I went to Terra Linda, Oak Hills, Meadow Park. I was the last ninth grade at Meadow Park when the whole transition happened, and graduated from Westview. Um, anyway, started here as a courier, and then I became a maintenance one worker, maintenance two, maintenance three, and then eventually foreman. Um, I see a lot of you guys on a lot throughout the year, which is unique. But this job has also offered me going on field trips with my kids as well when my wife wasn't able to. So this place has provided those moments that a lot of people don't get to enjoy. So that's about it.
Sorry, Martin, I missed you. I'm gonna have to quick type bus driver before I forget to do that. Depending on how you describe a first job in education, my first one might have been when I was an elementary school student filling pipette tip boxes for my parents in their teaching lab. Um, but I've pretty much been around education my entire life. Both my parents were in higher ed. So I'm not sure I entirely knew that there was another option. I worked in the biology library in undergrad, but my first out of undergrad job was as a classified office assistant at a community college. Then I decided I wanted to be in the classroom and went back to grad school to teach in higher ed. While I was in grad school, I taught French and journalism and women's studies and a few other things. And that's also when I got into labor organizing, and that's where I've been ever since.
Okay, I guess I started working in education when I was in high school because it was an easy way to get out of school early and get credit for it. I could go home in between and watch my soaps and then go to the daycare. And then I worked at Children's World for a long time, drove the van for a while, also got in trouble. We won't talk about it. Did a lot of other jobs, and then I became a single mom, and I decided that I needed to be on the same schedule with my kids so that I wasn't paying for daycare during the summer and all the breaks into this and that. And in Colorado Springs, you could sub both certified and classified without a degree. So I did that the whole time I was there and became the PTA president. And then we came back here and I gave up my dream of going back to school to finish my nursing degree and just stayed with the school district. Started here as a sub. Janine Weir talked me into it. I've been here ever since and probably will be here forever.
All right, I think I'm last. My mom went to law school as a second career. She was a single mom, and so she went through the night program, and then she had been HR director at North Clackamas, so she started working with school districts, and so I went to a lot of bargaining sessions like this. If this would have been in the evening, I would have been sitting back in the corner like coloring or something. So I got dragged to a lot of bargaining, and which probably meant I didn't have a chance. So all I've ever known is working with school districts as an attorney. I've done it for 25 years. I'm lucky to do it. I have fantastic clients, and it's a super interesting area of the law. So that's all I know. That's all I'll probably ever work with too.
Thank you. Those are all some really great answers. If you turn back over to the screen, you can see that Teresa has put this together for us. I don't know if she has comments on her color coding. Yes, I think it's really cool to look at and see. And then you actually hear about people's journeys. Even all of us that might work together often or meet, we don't have the time to sit and get to really know people's journeys. I think, and with that, I think a piece we have is we got to hear your first job, got to hear your journey through education. We would love a word or a sentence, doesn't have to be a long story, or if it wants, Andrew, if you want to tell a story, tell me a story, because I'm here for it. But we want to know what in your current role do you think is one of the most essential parts of your current position? I'm gonna let Mike go. I feel like his is easy.